Welcome, everybody, to Relational Organizing. This is a challenging, and we all know how important this election is, but now we're in a pandemic. We can't rely on some of the tactics that we've used in the past. So we have to get creative, and we have to stay vigilant, and we have to work really hard. It's going to take a lot of hard work and all of us reaching out. So we're excited to share relational organizing with you and vote tripling. To talk about ways that safely at home you can really make an impact on this election. Who we are. So I'm Steve Pierson. I've been working with Swing Left since it founded in a number of different capacities, as a field director, as the program manager for Swing Left Academy, which was our training arm last cycle. And now, as Christian mentioned earlier, I'm the co-host of our Swing Left How We Win podcast. Christian is a badass, incredible, gifted organizer who has been touched by the organizing gods to share his information with everyone. He's the kind of guy that I would call and just soak up all this information from, and then get on calls with other people and just regurgitate what he said. And people thought that I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't. I was just echoing Christian's amazing insight. So he's been working on multiple political campaigns for many, many years. And I'm so thrilled that he's going to be here to present relational organizing. And then Ani and Marco are both from Vote Tripling. They're going to be on shortly, and they'll introduce themselves. They're both field directors for Vote Tripling, and amazing people. And the four of us should put a band together, because it would be fun. It would be, I think, probably jazz. So before we move on, I want everyone here to think of 3 people who need a reminder to vote this year. And I want it to be specific. So 3 friends of yours who maybe aren't super engaged, who you can remind to vote. Think of them. Think in your mind. If you want to write their names down in the chat too, just so that you can put that out into the world, go ahead and do that. 3 specific people that need a reminder to vote this year. Besides Trump, who's the worst? Of our elected Republicans, they're all, well, we got a flurry of Mitch with a dash of Bill Barr in there. Yeah, Jordan. They're like in a competition. Like every time you think one of them is the worst, another one's like, no, wait, I'm the worst. I mean, there was a time when Lindsey Graham was the worst. Remember back then when Lindsey Graham was really the worst? Yeah, and Jim Jordan in these recent hearings yelling at all of us, I don't like that one bit. I really, really don't. And Bill Barr is a very dangerous and terrible man. So plenty of people to hate, a lot of work to do. Devin Nunes. See, like we don't talk enough about Devin Nunes, but he's the worst, isn't he? They're all the worst. I think it's a tie, except Mitch definitely.
I put the money on Mitch just for the fact that he has power. Mitch has power, knows what to do with it, whereas Jordan is just obnoxious, like a Ted Cruz, like a number of other Republicans. So I think Mitch is the worst just because he knows how to use power for evil. Yeah,
that's a great point. And I've been saying for a long time that there is a very good argument to be made that it is more important that we take over the Senate than it is that we win the White House. It's tough to make that argument these days. It gets harder and harder because, Trump is truly the worst and a very dangerous person to our democracy and to our country. But we must flip the Senate. Thank you. Rose, you took the words right out of my mouth before I could say it. We must flip the Senate. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to hand it over to Christian and his Black Lives Matter t-shirt right now.
I want to make sure, because this might not be on your newsfeed anymore. It might not be trending on your IG source. I want to remind everyone that there's still 2 people who are employed by the Louisville Police Department that have murdered someone. And there's 3 people who are murderers that are still out on the street and haven't been prosecuted yet. So while it might not be on your timeline, it might not be on the headline news, I want to make sure everyone remembers that Breonna Taylor's murders are still out there. And if you haven't called the Louisville Police Department, if you haven't called their AG, please do so now. Sign every petition, make every call you can, because it does definitely matter. So what are we going to learn today? So pretty basic. We're going to learn what relational organizing is. We're going to see a few best practices about how to apply that relational organizing. And then we're going to go to Vote Tripling, which is a form of relational organizing that's taken it to the next level. They have a little bit of science behind it and a lot of best practices. And then we're going to hopefully have time for Q&A so we can keep this chat going and make sure we're answering all the questions you have and need to make sure we go out there and win this election. Cool. So what is relational organizing? As we think about relational organizing, I want everyone in here to think, what was it about your first event that made you keep coming back? There was something, whether it was the food, whether it was the like-minded people, and you found your community that you were able to persuade a voter to actually vote or change their mind. What was it about it? Put it in the chat box here. I think for so long when we organize, we lose track of what we love about this work. And so want the best practices to keep feeding here so we know how to keep people engaged in this society and this culture. All right, so relational organizing, quite frankly, is just good organizing. I know that seems super basic and relatable, but what relational organizing isn't is it's not transactional. What you often see in organizing, and especially electoral organizing, it's very transactional. You want this person to win. I need this door knocked. Go knock this door, and I'll never see you again. What we want to talk about here is how do we sustain this movement and really leverage people's network. What relational organizing allows you to do is really ground your thinking and process in the unique value add that every individual comes into this. It's really important to think that every single person that comes and volunteers, whether it's once or 100 times, every single person wants to have an impact. And every single person is uniquely able to do something. And oftentimes we get bogged down and pigeonhole people into, we're canvassing this week. So, Steve doesn't want to canvass this week, so I'm never going to call Steve again. And that's usually what's transactional. But in relational organizing, you can use Steve's resources to a different level. And that's really where building beyond a one-on relationship and really leveraging Steve or whoever the person you're talking to comes into play. Because if you have a relationship with your team members, with other volunteers, with the community, you are able to know that they have resources that they can provide for this. And so we all know Steve out of the podcast. Steve doesn't want to canvas. Maybe Steve can put a pitch out there and share our signups. So make sure we get more people to go out and canvas. So when we talk about relational organizing, it's always asking yourself, what can this person contribute to the movement? Because everyone, no matter who they are, want to contribute to the movement, even if it's not exactly what the campaign needs at the moment. All right, so how do we do this? What does this actually look like? So again, relational organizing allows you to know how everyday people can contribute to the movement. And again, I can't stress this enough. You want to make sure you give people context on what it is that they're doing, because phone banking can be very scary to newcomers, or just, not the funnest thing for some volunteers who just don't like talking on the phone. And what you want to make sure you're doing is letting people know how that phone call that they're making, the 3 or 4 conversations that they have, how impactful that is to winning this election and how it scales and adds to everyone's collective movement. So to be good at relational organizing, the first thing you have to do as an organizer, as someone who's actively trying to bring more people into this fold, is you need to have a general understanding of the campaign's hierarchy of needs. By that, I mean, some of you have direct contact with local campaigns, whether it's congressional races, Senate races, so on and so forth. You have a relationship with the local Biden organizer. They will tell you, we're going to canvass this day of action, we're going to phone bank this other day of action, and we need people to be a rapid response team. So in order to be good at this, you need to collect this. You need to collect this information and knowledge to make sure that you're able to plug people into the right place. Step 2, on the next slide, what you need to know is how can people have an impact on selection? Because everyone is asking you or wants to know how can they have an impact. And there's 3 fundamental ways. There's getting more people to vote, which can either look like persuading people to vote, telling people to register to vote, or just getting more volunteers so we can talk to more people about voting. The other way is about money. So you can donate so the campaigns can hire more organizers. You can donate money to feed the volunteers, so on and so forth. And the third way is media. And we're going to talk about this a lot because the world we live in, we're going to rely much more on social media. That's going to come in a different form, but media can be as simple as making sure you're amplifying your candidates' messaging and talking points on Twitter. It can mean talking to a family member about coming over to the light side and getting away from the Republican Party. So again, you need a hierarchy of needs. You also need to know how you can help a campaign. And these are the 3 fundamental ways you can help the campaign. We got to constantly think how people can be the most impactful. As I gave the example here, Steve might be a terrible phone banker. Steve might be one of those phone bankers that just sits around the office or on the Zoom and just chit chats with everyone about what he saw on Rachel Maddow and doesn't actually make phone calls. So what you want to be able to do is to figure out how Steve can best be an asset to this. Maybe he brings food, maybe he donates money, maybe he talks about things on his podcast. It varies. But you have to constantly think about what people can bring to the movement. So giving context, again, everyone wants to have an impact. And so, again, I can't stress this enough. People will go and phone bank. And sometimes, for some of us who have experienced this, we'll make 100 phone calls and we'll talk to one person, or we'll get a lot of wrong numbers. And that's not the best environment to make sure someone comes back and volunteers again. So what you want to make sure you're doing is constantly reinforcing people, one, that they're doing a good job, two, giving them the context of why those 100 calls matter, even if they were all wrong numbers, right? You have to be able to give them a context of how helpful it is that those 100 people will never be on anyone else's list ever again, which will guarantee that we talk to more people in the future. No one wants to waste your time. Everyone's time is really valuable, and they want to make sure that they're helping the campaign. So make sure to give context when you're doing relational organizing. And last thing, when it comes to good relational organizing, keep asking till you get a no. What typically happens when you're organizing is you put blinders on and you think, wow, I need to make as many phone calls as possible. I'm hosting a phone bank. I need to get as many people here. And usually you'll ask Steve, can you come to my phone bank? And the moment he says the yes, you move on and you never think about asking Steve for another favor. What a good relational organizer does is continuously ask of Steve, because quite frankly, volunteers are not shy, and they will tell you no when you've hit their limit of how much they're willing to contribute. And so by this, you want to start with a really high ask. Instead of just asking Steve to come to my phone bank, what I should ask, especially to the regular, Steve, can you help me train new people? Steve, can you bring new people? Steve, can you host your own phone bank? I do mine on Monday. Can you do yours on Thursday? So you keep asking people to contribute to this movement because, again, people want to have an impact. People want to give as much as they possibly can. You don't want to rob people of the opportunity of having as much impact as they want just because you were afraid to ask them for it. So always make sure to ask people for exactly what you need until you get to know. And as I'm sure most of you have experienced here, you've gotten a lot of no's to come to your canvases or come to your phone banks or your letter writing letters. So don't be shy about getting that no. So now we're going to apply this to real life circumstances. So the first example we're going to talk about is how do we do relational organizing via votes. So in the chat, which is already going off on fire, what's the most successful tactic that you've used to get a friend or family member to volunteer with you? So how have you bribed people? What favors out there are really useful that other people can steal and borrow? Tears. That one I think is going to win.
While people are putting those in there, I just want to, a lot, when you were talking about phone banking, a lot of people were sharing their experiences with phone banking. And I just want to let people know, if they haven't done it lately, it's a lot more rewarding actually during the pandemic. We're having a lot more luck getting people because they're home and they are kind of starved for conversation sometimes to talk to someone other than their kids or their family members. So the phone banking has been going very well during this pandemic.
So applying relational organizing to those. So the way you want to think about this, I gave you an example with Steve about expanding leadership role. And so a lot of you might be tired and burned out and are wondering, why aren't more people getting involved? It's August, we got 90X days left. And the main reason for that is a lot of the people who are your regulars who constantly come to your phone bank, they simply haven't been asked to take on a leadership role. And leadership role can look a myriad of different ways, from asking them to be a trainer, asking them to recruit people, or asking them to host their own on a separate day. We all know that people are animals of habit, and they love going to their Monday phone bank or their Monday postcard writing Zoom. But giving people more opportunities, allow more people to join this movement. So when you think about relational organizing, how to fold it in there, look around your friends and ask them to take on a bigger role so we can continue to expand this movement. The other way we can really leverage those is leveraging our networks. That means on your personal network, your friends, your family, people who live in your household, your extended family, but also literally going on social media and mining through where do people live in battleground states, which family members have there. Have I started a conversation with them? And really leveraging that. Where do you have friends that live in the battleground state, and ask them to start their own phone bank. Ask them to reach out to people and get them to commit to vote. The other thing, when you talk about relational organizing, how we expand this, is a menu of options. I keep giving the example that Steve hates to phone bank or he's lousy at it. You have to make sure that you give people different options of how they can join this movement. And so maybe Steve is bad at making phone calls, but he has a great personality and people love hearing him talk. So maybe he's a fit for a trainer. And that frees me up so I don't have to train every single new person that comes in, and he can take on that role. And, you know, it can be from giving people the option to make phone calls, to text bank, you know, to amplify messages on social media, to donate. Again, give people different options, and they will tell you no, which ones they don't feel comfortable with, and they'll say yes, so they do feel comfortable with. How can you be relational organizing on digital platforms? So the first and easiest way is to make sure you're amplifying candidates' messages. This is really, really easy. This can look as simple as a retweet. This could be something as simple as a like on Facebook or Instagram. What we know about social media is the messages that get most engaged with are the ones that are shared the broadest with people that are outside that network. So if you want to be on social media and you want to help a candidate, the best thing you can do is constantly engage with it. And the low level engagement are the likes and the retweets. But a heavy engagement is actually commenting or resharing. That's the best way you can really ensure people are seeing candidates' messaging. The second way you can engage is through using social media to recruit new people. I'm sure tons of us have gone out there and seen people we don't know make really positive or inspirational comments on elected officials' posts. That's a very easy opportunity for you to engage that person and invite them to your phone bank. And since we're all virtual now, bringing people from different states or cities is feasible. So you want to make sure when you see those people leaving those comments that are like-minded people, invite them into the movement, invite them to your phone bank or your letter writing Zoom. Next thing you want to do is engage with your network. And this is more about people you have a personal relationship with. You want to make sure that you leverage your power. So for example, if you have a family member out there that you get along with, you have a good relationship with, but you're on the opposite side of the aisle, this is a perfect opportunity for you to engage with them. Because if your family member in Iowa who is a moderate, they might not listen to a Latino from Los Angeles on a Black Lives Matter shirt, but they might listen to their niece, right? And so you want to make sure you have those conversations with your friends and family members grounded in shared values and shared experiences to make sure you're persuading them. What we found time and time again is that the number one thing that persuades voters is a family member or a friend or neighbor that has a conversation about values with them. And so this is the most impactful way you can really swing this election is by using your network, people who live in these battleground states, and having real conversations with them. And no, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is usually multiple conversations. And sometimes we want to yell and call them crazy, but that doesn't help win any voters. So make sure to take a deep look at your network and see how are you making progress on this person to make sure they vote the right way. All right, and the last way is money. And I'm going to be very short with this because it's very simple. There's going to be people who just consistently tell you, no, I don't. I hate talking to strangers. I don't want to write postcards, but I want to help. And we all know that while amplifying and liking on Instagram is helpful, it's not the most helpful way you can get involved. You want to make sure that you give people different options. And if they don't want the human-to-human contact and they're not really going to do much on social media, you should ask them for resources. And now those resources come in many different ways. So the most common way is donation. Cut a check to your favorite elected official or the person you want to get rid of, and cut a check to their opponent. But this can look in a lot of different ways. People own restaurants, people own coffee shops. Have them donate coffee, have them donate whatever, food, wine, whatever it may be, so that the activists that you work with are fed and happy and hungry and have the support. We know in this age of COVID, we need much more resources and support more than ever. And so people can really be really impactful and really fuel the movement just by donating food or any kind of resources. But then the other thing you want to make sure you're asking people to do is donate directly to candidates. This allows the candidate to hire more organizers locally. It allows them to pay for more digital ads and TV ads that we know can be really important in this election. And it allows them to pay for more phone banks so that people like us from other states can jump on and do mass phone banking into the district. But it does get expensive. You can also ask them to donate to communal causes that you can maybe celebrate after the election or celebrate post-COVID in a collective manner to make sure we keep this movement going. All right, and so now I want to hand it off to Ani and Marco from Vote Tripling.
Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Marco Menigan. Ani?
Ani Kenamjan, and I'm one of our national field directors here at votetripling.org. Marco will be sharing on the presentation. I will say if you have any questions specifically about this relational organizing tactic, this is a specific tactic, I will be in the chat box to answer.
We are both national field directors. I'm on the IE side, Ani's uncoordinated. Okay, so the problem that our founders saw is on election day, we urge people to vote and that's it. There is no relational ask associated with it. So meet Nikki. Nikki is what we refer to as a non-activist. He votes, but he's not active. He doesn't volunteer for campaigns. And as a result, in 2016, Nikki did exactly what we asked him to. He voted, but he didn't urge any of his friends to vote, and he didn't bring anyone with him to the polls. People like Nikki, non-activists, are what we consider the most powerful relational organizers that we have. People like you and I, people who are volunteering our time, we make up just a sliver of the Democratic electorate. The majority, 97%, are Nikkis. And the thing about Nikki is that he is friends with other Nikkis. And because of that, we consider them our best messengers. If people like you or I tell someone to go vote, goes through one ear and out the other, because we're always talking about voting. But when Nikki says that, that's a message that's going. So we estimate that if this year we repeat what we did in 2016, we could forfeit as much as 8 million votes. Think about the tens of thousands of votes that helped us lose the battleground states, and then think about 8 million votes. Those are 8 million people that will vote if they just get a push from a friend. So the solution, as we see it, is to go after that 97% of non-activists who don't volunteer. So how do we do that? With Vote Tripling. Vote Tripling is a tactic. It is not an app. It is not software you have to download. It's a tactic that's based in behavioral science. And it goes across any platform or any mode of communication that you want to use. You can use this with texting, with phone banking, with door knocking, even in some digital platforms. And basically it consists of an ask and a reminder. The ask is, will you remind 3 friends to vote? The person says yes. They give you the first names of those 3 friends. And then closer to election day, they will get a reminder, giving them the specific names of the 3 friends that they said they would remind. The thing about Vote Tripling is empowering. All of us in organizing grew up with the Commit to Vote pledge. And the Commit to Vote pledge is great. But the Commit to Vote pledge, in our experience, some volunteers and some voters find it condescending when we say, will you vote? And they say yes. And then we get them to pledge to vote too. It's like, don't you trust me? With Vote Tripling, that trust is already implied. We're saying not only do we view you as a leader within your peer group, we view you as someone who can get other people to come with you. So it's more empowering. It's more inclusive. People who aren't registered to vote, let's say they're too young to vote, or they have legal issues that allow them not to be able to register to vote, they can still ask 3 friends to vote. And it's easy for voters to say yes. Vote Tripling is a great ask to put into your script after a volunteer ask or some other ask where people often will say no. And the other thing is it's free. As I said, it's a tactic. It's not software. It's not an app. You don't have to pay anything. It just requires training and preparation. So as an organization that's dedicated to behavioral science, we wanted to test this out. So in the 2018 Beto O'Rourke Ted Cruz race, we actually tested this out with about 20,000 voters. We had 10,000 in a control group, 10,000 in a treatment group. All of them got the same GOTV messaging, except the treatment group also got Vote Tripling. And what we found is that it increased turnout by 1.2 percentage points. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but statistically, that is hugely significant. And that is the most effective new turnout method that's been tested since Donald took office. Another way to look at this is that vote tripling is actually nearly 4 times more effective than the effect of just sending direct texts to mobilize voters. So how do we collect vote tripling pledges? So we can do this with canvassing. This is an example of a simple pledge card that you would give at the door. As you can see, the person's given their name, their phone number, and 3 friends that they will remind. We can do this with, that's fine. You can just keep it there. We can do this with phone banking. And we can even do this at virtual events. Here you see an event for Stephen Smith for governor. They have a text bot, text triple to this number, and that will take care of your vote tripling pledge collection.